Welcome back to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Emilio Nello, and we have two special guests with us. It's Fulham legends Gordon Davies and Rob Wilson. This is a very special episode as we will be looking back at the Fulham season. This should be interesting because we actually did a couple of shows, one at the beginning of the season, previewing the season. We did a mid-season review. And let's just say we all kind of got it wrong. So it'll be interesting to look back at some of the things that we said back then. And then we're going to talk about, we'll go through the season and just talk about why things went the way they went. Why was there a collapse? That's going to be the big question. We'll talk about everything, talk about the issues that we had in midfield, issues we had up front. We have a lot to talk about. Before we do anything else, I want to welcome Emilio back to the show. Then we'll invite the guys back on. First, Emilio. How you doing, my friend? You looking forward to this?
Hi, Russ. Hi, Rob. Hi, Gordon. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's disappointing that we have to do it in circumstances about talking about the disappointment of the season. But, there's a lot. We do have a lot to cover off tonight. And, it'll be an interesting couple seasons ahead, I think, to be honest. I think I also want to dwell on what does next season hold in store. There's a lot that needs to change. But, let's rip up this year and let's rebuild. That's the thing for me. There's a lot of, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs in the next few months in the lead up to next season. But I can't believe how quickly the season's gone. It only seemed like yesterday that we won the championship, final. That was 8-9 months ago already. Goodness.
That's all it was.
Time just flies by, doesn't it? Going from elation to commiseration, literally in such a, but never mind. We've always got next season. That's the way I look at it.
That's right. And I'm actually looking forward to next season. And like I said, we could talk a little bit about that near the end of the show. We have a lot to tackle. First, Gordon, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm very good considering we've moved about 3 weeks ago. So we're in a new house and I'm surrounded by boxes and boxes and boxes. And I'm tiptoeing my way through rooms trying to find out where the wife is and where the three dogs are. So... everything is good here, apart from the football.
Well, that's obvious, my friend. That's obvious, and I look forward to getting your views of this Fulham season, and I have my own views as well. Rob, how you doing? Are you looking forward to doing the show?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, good evening, all. Yeah, very much looking forward to the show. As Emilio said, it's in unfortunate circumstances, but hey ho, that's what it is being a Fulham fan. We've had the joys of this in the last sort of 3 seasons. So up, down. So we'll cross a lot of points tonight, and I'm sure we're no experts. We got it all wrong, the 4 of us. So
we certainly did.
I'm sure there's reasons for that, but looking forward to the evening. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Well, before we get into really doing a season review, we do have to talk about what happened last night. And, and again, in a terrible season, it was nice to see Fulham get a point at Old Trafford, and again, it could have been all 3. We can talk about the goal from Cavani, and again, Danny Higginbotham, on Peacock said the goal shouldn't have counted. So if you look at it that way, maybe Fulham could have stolen all 3 points, but to be honest with you, to get a point at Old Trafford, the season we had, I'll take that. I'll go to you first, Gordon. What were your thoughts about the match in general? And I'll just say this, and the one positive, and I already tweeted this out, a huge positive to come out of this is Fabio Carvalho. I thought, again, he showed some light, and again, he showed he had something. And that was the one thing that impressed me. I know that we got the point, but he, to me, was the one thing that really shined for me in that match. What showed you in that match against Manchester United?
Well, he's probably, I would have said, the only forward that we've had all season that's threatened in behind the back 4. Yes, it's a great ball through to him. He gets past the defender with a bit of pace, so he's looking and playing on the last shoulder, which we haven't had all season. The only thing that I would say to him is in the position that he found himself in, I think he's probably used to taking it early in the under-23s. He could have taken it on another couple of yards and got closer and may have had a better chance of scoring.
Right.
But yes, he's definitely, or it's definitely a positive for the club with with the way that he's played over the last sort of 2 games.
Yeah.
But you get Scott talking of him that he's done well enough in the last 3 weeks to force his way in. To be perfectly honest with you, he could have done with perhaps throwing him in 5, 6, 7 games ago.
Totally agree, Gordon.
And just seeing how he reacted. If he's not quite ready, you bring him off. You bring him out of the first team, but keep him in the squad, and then he comes in a bit later. But I just think, if without going into too much, that situation where he's played him may have been a bit late, and yes, it's a positive for next year. Yep. And to be perfectly honest with you, we weren't torn apart, which everybody thought before the game, and we weren't looking as though it was going to be a 4, 5, 6-0 hammering, which I think everybody was thinking of. So at least the players out there gave their all. I know somebody's going to bring up 1 or 2 players who seem to not give their all, but at least it seemed as though they were out there trying to do as much as they could, really, against a team that's second in the league. They've got internationals playing for them left, right and centre. And we put up a good performance for a team in the position that we were. So there are positives, not many, but there are positives to pick out from going forward from this season into next season.
Okay, excellent. Rob, I want to get your thoughts, and I'm glad that Gordon talked about, in general, the play against Manchester United. Again, I thought there was the potential to get torn apart. But then it's funny, I went back to something that you said on a prior episode. You said you didn't think that we would really have a hammering the rest of the season. Well, there were a couple of matches that again, you could say that happened. But against the bigger sides, we usually hung in there fairly well. And, and first time against Manchester United, we played them fairly well. So what are your thoughts about the match? And the other thing that I want to throw in there about Carvalho, he did not look out of place playing in the Premier League in 2 matches. That's got to be a positive as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, when I saw the team of theirs and ours, I did fear for us. I actually said to my wife, I think it could be 4 or 5 here if we don't start right. But yeah, I mean, obviously over the 90 minutes, the second half was a better 45 than the first. As you've alluded to, Carvalho last week and yesterday has showed some lovely touches. His movement off the ball is something different. I mean, it's big football for him. He's under 18s, under 23s. He looked a bit lightweight a couple of times because he's playing against grown men, and he'll grow in the summer, I'm sure, on a weights program. I'm sure that they'll start to allude to. But yeah, he's definitely one, like as Gordon said, that had a little bit of pace that got him behind me, got me in behind him, and we've seen that over the 2 games that he's actually done. I mean, we've had players like Caballero and Lookman, have enough chances to do, Caballero playing a false number 9, not done that once really. You know what I mean?
That's my point. Rob, you're making my point
all the time. So it was a nice finish to the last away game, and as you said, against all the top teams, we've had our best results.
That's right.
The Liverpools and Leicester, Everton, Arsenal. So we've nicked points against the top 6 or top 8 sides. So, the potential was there throughout the season, but we just haven't done it consistently. And as we've all said, our home form's been absolutely abysmal.
Yeah, and that turns out to be really our downfall. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit of downfall when we get into it, as Emilio alluded on our preview show, would be the home form. He was concerned about the home form, that we need to have good home form. And Gordon actually said that it really would come down to the final third. So both of you ended up being right, because there was the problems in the final third and the home form combined, and it just was just not good enough for Fulham Football Club. Over to you, Emilio. What are your thoughts about the match?
Yeah, again, given our situation, we had nothing to lose, right? It was all about going out there and playing with a bit of pride. Scott Parker can't seem to do anything right at the moment, because everyone complained about the not playing the lone players. He made a few changes, brought in Ream and Joe Bryan, and he still gets criticised because everyone was expecting us to be hammered. Me and you spoke off air before the game, saying actually I was okay with that lineup. I said, well, do the right thing, don't play your lone players. Maybe give Tim Ream his final game.
Exactly, that's the way I looked at it.
Joe Bryan, divides opinion. My thoughts about him, and overall, I was okay with that lineup, and the fact that we looked reasonably comfortable. I was disappointed with, like you said at the beginning, that we didn't go out and win the game. I thought we wasted that free kick with 5 minutes left. Why didn't we just? We had all our big players up in the 6-yard box, and you play it back.
Maybe sideways, backwards. Yeah,
come on, that's poor decision making. And again, it's things like that have been affecting us throughout the course of the season. But Carvalho, a bit of, like Gordon said, a bit more maturity, a bit more confidence. Next season, hopefully, he'll be playing regularly week in, week out, and we'll bang those in the back of the net and get us out of the Championship. So he didn't look out of position. But overall, professional performance. Whatever people say Man United weren't good enough, yes, quite clear they weren't good enough, but they put a bloody strong team out there, and they were up for the challenge. They gave us no space. Cavani scored a quality goal. You could question whether it was offside or not. But overall, we deserved a point, and with a bit more ambition, a bit more intelligence in the final third, that game was there for the taking, the last 10 minutes or so. But you never know. We've got to take the point. So it's nothing to lose. We played some of our permanent players, and hopefully we go to Newcastle and end the season on the high.
Yeah, no, very good there, and it'll be good ending against Newcastle at Craven Cottage. That should be good, and and then we can move on for next season. But guys, let's start here. And like I mentioned, we did a preview show. It was me, Gordon, and Emilio, and so we're going to start. And then Rob, and if you can remember what you thought, what your thoughts were at the beginning of the season, I'll add you into the mix here. But Gordon, I'm going to start with you. I'm just going to share what your prediction was at the beginning of the season. I went back and listened to the show, and I love you, Gordon, because you're a very positive person like myself. You predicted 14th, okay? 14th, and I understand. Yes. And I understand why you did, because you made me feel more comfortable, because I was like, it's coming from Gordon. He knows what he's talking about. So you predicted 14th. So with that prediction, just go into why you felt comfortable making that prediction, and then I'll go to Emilio and Rob.
I just think that we are a better team than at least the teams that were at the bottom of the table the year before.
Yeah.
I was honestly thinking that Leeds were going to be in the mix down the bottom.
I predicted it. I got that wrong.
Because I thought that they rely so much on Bamford to score the goals. And in the Premier League, was he going to do it on a regular basis? And he proved me wrong. He proved a lot of pundits wrong with the step up, because Leeds were creating chances for him. I just looked around even at the beginning of the season, and I just thought we are at least the fourth or the fifth poorest team, if I want to use that, not the worst team, poorest team in the league. But we can win games. We have got a player, if he's on form, Mitrovic, who can win games for us. And I was expecting us to do well against the bottom, if I say the bottom 8 teams.
Yep.
Because even in my program notes in the Fulham program, I said from the start of the season we were in an 8-league team, an 8-team league,
right?
And I thought that we could finish second, third, at worst fourth in that league. But when you look at the results that we've had against the bottom teams, I think we've picked up 14 points against the bottom 10.
That's right.
As Rob said, and you mentioned to it, we've picked up 13 points against the top 10.
It's
so there's no sense that we can do it. It's just that we haven't done it on a consistent basis, and that's what let us down. And really, I would still say now that you look at our squad of players for the second half of the season, and it's a better squad than possibly the bottom 6 teams, but we haven't produced.
That's right. That's right, Gordon, because again, I'm glad that you talked about that, because something else that you mentioned, and I want to talk about this now, because you talked about on that show, you talked about the recruitment, and Scott, you had mentioned was involved with the recruitment of the players. You said one of the big differences between 2 seasons ago was that Savisa didn't look at the videos, but that Scott was actually involved. So, again, he had input on the players coming, and so again, when people talk about that Scott didn't get the players he wanted, well, I don't think that's the case, because I think he had a say in this. So, but again, this goes back to talking about individual talent. You can have the individual talent, but if it doesn't come together, Gordon, the best recruitment in the world, it's not going to work because you got to play together as a team.
You have, and plus the fact that you can go out, and big clubs have done it. Big clubs can buy international players, and the move doesn't work out. I suppose going back years ago, there was the situation of Gary Birtles playing out of his skin at Nottingham Forest and knocking goals in for fun. He gets a big move to Manchester United, and he couldn't hit a barn door from 5 yards. And it is like that with some moves. Now, the way that Scott plays, and we'll probably go on to it a bit later. Does that, if, as everybody uses the phrase Parker ball. Does Parker ball suit the players that we've got in the positions that they are being played? So there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you bring players in, and sometimes the player fits a little niche that you're looking at, and sometimes they don't. And that's not down to the way that you pick them. It's not down to the way that they play when they get out there. Sometimes they are not happy with the system that's being played, and you never get that 110% out of them. You get 60, 70, 80%. And we'll probably speak about Loftus-Cheek later on. I'll just mention quickly, only because I don't know where his best position is. It's certainly not as a centre forward. And to me, what he's produced, it certainly doesn't look like a wide midfield player. So that's one move that the club have made that obviously didn't work out. But it's difficult to put your finger on it because, as you mentioned, and as I said, a lot of the players that came here actually spoke to Scott.
That's right.
That was what made them decide, having spoken to the manager, to come to Fulham. So something's gone wrong in the mix, but you can't. I don't think you can probably at present put your finger on what it's down to or who's actually responsible for it at the end.
Okay, very good. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because, again, when we talk about the players, there are factors that go along with this. Like you said, quality players, but did they, like you said, fit the system? Was it about not being the right fit? Like you said, was it the right niche? That's something that, again, that is interesting about all this, because I think we have the quality, as you said, Gordon, but for whatever reason, it just didn't come together the way that we had hoped it would. Rob, your thoughts on the season, then I want to go to Emilio. What was your prediction for the beginning of the season? And feel free to share your thoughts on what Gordon just shared.
Yeah, as I say, I would have been probably as bullish as Gordon was at 14th. I honestly thought with the turnover of players and the quick turnaround from Championship going into the first few games, other than the first game, obviously, Arsenal, where we got a bit of a spanking, I was highly confident that we would finish outside the bottom three, and probably 14th, 15th, 13th, like Gordon said, would have been, with the players that we and the experience we should have learned from 2 seasons before. I thought we would, we would easy stay up, but the first 6-8 games was horrific. Really, it really found us out in terms of defensively. And as I say, we continue to play the same type of football, and mistakes were being made readily. We weren't learning from them. We hadn't really, that first quarter of the season, I didn't see any people that had learned from their bad experiences the first time round, even the Championship players that we'd got. It was. I was thinking about it today when I was driving around for work, and I thought, I put it into sort of thirds really. The start we had was horrendous. The middle section we seemed to get ourselves back after we changed the back four and the goalkeeper. We got ourselves in a position, as we alluded off air earlier on in February. We, even before the Liverpool game in March, we'd got ourselves back into a position where every pundit around the country was saying, "Oh, Fulham will catch Newcastle, Burnley or Brighton," and then we've we've faded away the last 7 games as bad as we were the first 8 games in terms of who we've played and the carrot was there and the reward to try and stay in this division. We've just fell off a cliff in them last 8 games. Yeah, we were unfortunate a couple of games where we've conceded last minute, but it was alarmingly disappointing at the back end of the season as it was watching the first 8 games of the season.
Yeah, that's such a good way to put it. It really is. If you break it up into thirds, it's the middle third that was encouraging, but the beginning and the end just, again, horrific. And that's where most of the negative damage of this Fulham season for us really went down. Okay, Emilio, over to you. And I'll just mention that Emilio's prediction, this is what you said, Emilio. You said 16th, maybe 17th. So I'm going to put both of them in there. You were cautioning me and Gordon. You were the one that was trying to ground both of us because we're both positive people. I'm not saying you're negative. I'm just saying that you are more even keel where you're just looking at the evidence, and I am a very positive person. So you said, okay, 16th or 17th. I said 17th, believe it or not, but you said 16th or 17th. So let's look back at your prediction, and I want to mention this because I said this to Emilio off air. He turned out to be Nostradamus de Nello because he said this. He said this on that preview show. He said it would come down to our home form. Emilio, you ended up being right. So let's talk about your season predictions and what you thought about at the beginning of the season.
I'd even take a step back. I remember we did the show straight after the Championship final at Wembley, and I remember rightly, it was 11 o'clock at night? And my reaction was, I'm worried about next season. You
said that.
Not celebrating.
Right off.
I was worried about this season coming up. I just thought the squad of players not good enough. We saw that 2 seasons ago. Wolverhampton, on paper, they got promoted and they had a good enough squad to compete at the Premier League, and they moved on to bigger, better things. Leeds United, I think we all thought Leeds United would survive, but they've had a team. I think one of the Stefan's mentioned it here as well. Leeds United had a team that was evolving over 2 or 3 seasons. They got promoted and they've comfortably stayed in the Premier League. We haven't done that. All we seem to be doing is reacting. We got promoted. Let's spend 100 million. We get promoted. Let's go and buy loan players. There's no strategy, long-term vision here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I was worried on that Championship final night that we didn't have enough strikers. We always talk about defence. We knew it was weak.
We're going to talk about that.
From day one, we haven't got enough goals in this team. And that's proven to be the downfall. And the home form, abysmal. 9 goals at home all season. Any team deserves to be relegated with that home form. So, am I surprised we got relegated? No, to be honest. But I said it to the guys, off air. This squad, on paper, Gordon, you alluded to it, I still think it was good enough to stay in this division. On paper,
so do I.
These players, on paper, were good enough. Lookman, no mug. Loftus-Cheek, why was he player of the season at Crystal Palace? Obviously, he was playing in a more advanced role, if I recall, with Batshuayi at the time. And them two were linking up very, very well. Why was he player of the season? You don't become a bad player overnight.
Right.
So, Anderson, international. Tete, we all were excited when Tete joined. A guy who can cross the ball. Areola, a France international. So on paper, this squad was good enough. Why has it not worked out? It's like Gordon says, it just didn't happen for us. And I don't believe it's just the players are accountable. My views towards the manager, that has changed in the last 2 months. But overall, do we deserve to be relegated? Of course. Points don't lie. The table doesn't lie. And our home form has knocked us out for 6. We had 3 or 4 home wins, and from that, there's 12 points. We would have been up there. We've done enough against the big teams, but the teams around us, Brighton, Southampton, Crystal Palace, Burnley, beat those teams at home, we would have stayed up. Basics. Okay. And that's the reason why we've gone down. So overall, it's disappointing, but am I surprised we got relegated? No, not at all.
Okay. Excellent stuff. Okay. Let's go back here because, again, I want to go to you, Gordon, because I want to talk about where we were when we talked about this season preview. And what was interesting is at this point, because I went back and listened to the episode, we had 4 signings. They were all defensive, and we were thinking about, okay, well, Parker's in charge, so that's different than what it was, say, 2 seasons ago. But what was interesting is that the 3 of us were all talking about what were the needs at that point. And we were getting comments from the Fulham supporters, and they were pretty much all in unison. It was center forward, center back, because at that point we still needed center backs. And we ended up getting the center back. But, Gordon, we never got the center forward. So I want to get your thoughts about at that point when we still have the window open, and at that point we just had all these defensive signings. Did you think at this point that we desperately needed another striker to go along with Mitro?
Yes, certainly. Purely because of the fact that Mitro could have got injured in the first game of the season. And then who do you put up front? My fear, even when we were in the top 6 in the championship, and I've been saying it for 2 years, we haven't got anybody who can replace Mitrovic if he's off form or if he gets an injury. And I was praying for 12 months that he wouldn't pick up an injury, because who is the player? I mentioned Bobby Decordova-Reid.
Yep, you did.
Could go up there.
You said that.
And you look at everything that's been done over this season. You can put players into a position and they will do a job. And when I played and Leroy and Dean Coney were up front for a short period of time, I had a discussion with Malcolm MacDonald and Ray Harford, and they wanted me to play wide right, but more attacking than defensively minded. Now, I could play there, and I did okay, but I was only doing a job.
Right.
You could have put a 16-year-old there to do the job that I did on the right side of midfield. But what I was asked to do then was when Dean and Leroy split, I was coming in from wide to get in between them. So I was still getting myself in the box. But as a right side midfield player, I was just doing a job. When Mitro has been off form or out of the team, we've had Bobby Reid doing a job. We've had Cavaliero doing a job.
Yep.
We've had Loftus-Cheek doing a job. And when the ball has fallen to them in areas where a striker would hit the target, we have missed or snatched at umpteen chances to put us in the lead in games, and then teams have gone down the other end and we find ourselves 1-0 down. Then those players who are not used to being in that position, when they do get a second opportunity, whether that's in the same game or the next game, they're thinking about the last miss, they then snatch at it, they got another miss. And it puts into perspective when you look at Bobby Decordova-Reid is our top league goal scorer on 5, followed by Lookman on 4, Cavaliero 3, Maja 3, Mitro 3. Those are diabolical numbers for players, and especially the first 3, because Bobby Reid's played 26 games, 5 goals. Cav has played 25 games, 3 goals, and Lookman has played 30 games, 4 goals. The return that you get from people doing a job is not as good as playing a 15 in these games, 15 to 20 goal a season striker who's getting on the end of things. And I've been mentioning the word scraps for 2 years.
Yes, you have.
When you're not providing the centre forward or the attacking players with chance after chance after chance, then you've got no hope of staying up. When, as you mentioned, we've scored 9 goals at home so far in 18 games. Or 17, 18 games. So it's just not good enough. And the biggest thing that we missed was having somebody, not necessarily to play instead of Mitrovic, but perhaps to play with him. And you change your formation. We couldn't even change our formation because we just didn't have another striker. And to me, that was sort of sacrilege that we didn't get one in when we definitely needed one.
Okay. Rob, your thoughts on this? Because, again, in a little bit, I want to revisit your thoughts on the midfield and then go back to Gordon and really analyze the situation in the final third, because I believe that, along with the home form, was ultimately our downfall. We're going to go back to that in a second. But your thoughts when we are, again, we're just about to start the season. We have these 4 signings, and we're talking about getting another center back. It turned out we brought in 2. But to Gordon's point, Josh Maja comes in, again, we could talk about this in a little bit, in January. But I'm sorry. I completely agree with Gordon. Why did we not bring in a striker, Rob? And I know Emilio agrees with me. I'll get his thoughts in a second.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, obviously, the highlight of the first 4 or 5 games warranted us to bring in some defenders, which we were all crying out for.
Right.
2 of them being centre halves. But yeah, I still think Scott obviously thought he had enough in the squad that he could rotate the players and play people in different positions in the type of football, possession-based football he wanted to play, that he wanted that he had enough, or do we know, did he try and get some a striker in and wasn't allowed to? Who knows? I don't know. Obviously, he did that in the second transfer and when we got Madger in, but I think it was too late then.
It was too late.
And I think he's done nothing for Fulham. All right, 3 goals, 2 in the Everton game. Other than that, when he's played, he's been poor. His general demeanour in his build-up play, you might as well have persisted and carried on playing Mitro. Whatever has gone on behind the scenes, Mitro wasn't the same player. I would have persisted in playing Mitro over Madger because he didn't show me anything. He might have been a little bit more mobile, but there were games where he'd had probably 3-4 touches in 45 minutes and 8 or 9 touches in 90, which for a striker, yes, and we can highlight the build-up play or whatever, but when you have Mitro who's got goals in there, and we're all seeing situations where he's been on the bench and he's not even come on before, where someone else has come on for him. So there was that's gone on from the beginning, not so much at the beginning of the season because our issues at the beginning were defensively, but I think Scott would have liked to have probably got someone in pre-season before the season, but we waited and got Madger in, but Madger didn't turn out to be the diamond we probably all thought he was going to get us the goals to get us back up the table. So disappointing in terms of that. We sorted the defensive side of that, but then going forward we just haven't scored the goals to keep us in this division. And the more alarming thing is that the midfield players weren't showing the endeavour and tenacity to get beyond the strikers, even in the system we played, to get themselves and get bodies in the box.
Well, that's what I want to get more into in just a second with you when we talk about the midfield, and I'll ask you about how much did Fulham miss Tom Kearney, because I want to get your thoughts on that. But Gordon, and again, I didn't ask you this before I go to Emilio. Again, what were your thoughts about Josh Madger? Do you agree with Rob?
Yeah, totally. Because in the Everton game, you've put 2 crosses in that we haven't put in to those areas for the majority of the season. And if we have put them in there, there's been nobody in there. And he gets on the end of basically 2 tap-ins. He probably could have had a hat-trick in the game. And you think, at least we've now got somebody that's going to get into those danger areas. Now all we need to do is get the ball into him and feed that ball into danger areas, because we've got somebody who's looking for it in that 6-yard box. And after that game, I think the following game was a home game, and I think he may have had 1 half chance in the entire 90 minutes, and nothing else was created for him. And once again, we're back to scraps. Right. That I've been talking about for 2 years, because if you bring somebody in, you've got to give them the service that they want, and it's like bringing a winger in who goes past players as if they're not there and gets great crosses in. And so what do? You go out to the other side and you forget about giving him the ball. No, you keep giving him the ball and saying go and attack. With Madger, you had to get the ball in that 12-yard area, because I don't think he's the type of player that will get it 25 yards out, beat 2 players and bend one in the top corner. He's the player that will get on things in 6, 8, 10, 12 yards out. But again, we didn't create anything for him. And as Rob mentioned, I suppose you look at the creativity in our midfield. Is it being I won't say coached out of them, but the way that we play, we don't seem to have that creative ability. And with Kearney being out for 5 months, He can pick a pass. And you've just got to look at the assists from Bobby Decordova-Reid up until 2 games ago, had played 24 games, no assists. Now, this is coming from the Fulham programme. He had 1 assist against Southampton when he put Fabio in. I think that was more of a pass to him rather than a pass past him into the box.
Right.
Then he puts a cross in at Man United for Joe Bryan to score. But 2 assists in 26 games. Cavaliero, 25 games. Apparently, according to the figures, no assists. And Lookman, 30 games, 4 assists. So 3 of our attacking midfield players have only got 6 assists all season. So how the hell are forwards or attacking players going to score when you've got nobody giving them a chance to get on the end of things?
That's a great point, Gordon. And I want to go back to Rob because then I'm going to go to Rob and have him analyze exactly what you were just talking about. Before I do that, Emilio, I want to go to you because I just want to get your thoughts, and then I want to dive into analyzing the midfield and then go back to Gordon on the strikers up front because there's a lot to talk about there. Your thoughts?
I think bottom line is they're not good enough. That's the reason why they're not assisting. Cavaliero he played more games in the Premier League than he did in the Championship. What does that tell you? Decordova-Reid, I said it before the season, good endeavour. He's not a Premier League player, and we've seen that, to be honest. And Cavaliero's not a Premier League player. Why did Wolves sell him when they got promoted? Same reason. So, Josh Maja, I also remember that Crystal Palace game. We dominated that game. Crystal Palace, I think, had 0 shots on target. Was that right? I think that's playing at home against us. I remember Maja coming deep into the halfway line, trying to get the ball, trying to make something happen. He got 0 service in that game. But like I said, Lookman got found out. He was our best player before Christmas. His form completely deteriorated after that. We could speculate why, but I'm not going to mention that now. But overall, his performance deteriorated from the second half. He got found out. He was always having 2 players against him. So, he was typically selfish, and when he was having 2 players marking him, where was that final ball? Very, very poor. So it was Oloaina. If we had more Oloaina crosses into the 6-yard box like he did against Everton, then we might have scored a few more goals. But at the end of the day, I just boiled it down to one thing. The players were simply not good enough. The reason why they're playing the Championship, that's the reason why. These players aren't good enough.
Okay, excellent. Okay, coming up next, Gordon and Rob are going to be analyzing the strikers up front and the midfield, and we have a lot to talk about after that, and we'll end with talking about what's next for Fulham for next season. Okay, Rob, I'm going to go over to you because, again, I'm glad that Gordon really got us started really diving into talking about what's been going on with Mitro, Maja, and the situation up front. But I think, like he was already mentioning we really have to talk about the midfield. And, and again, I'm curious your view, and again, we did a show back in February and you really analyzed it then. Thoughts now on the play and what Gordon's been talking about and also what Emilio just shared about with some of the players. Maybe they're just not good enough. Maybe that's also part of the issue. What do you see as the issues in the midfield over the course of the season, which led to the problems that we had in the final third? Because that ultimately will be when I go to Gordon, really, because as he said, the strikers were feeding off of scraps.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the systems that we played throughout the season from game to game, we've always had a holding midfield player, whether it be Harrison or Anguisse, or I mean, obviously the loss of Tom for 5 months has been a lot more damaging than people probably think. And
agree with
he was actually although he'd got dropped by Scott for a few games before, his form just started to come back. Just unfortunately when he did get injured, but we all know he can see a pass as much as he keeps the ball sideways and backwards. He is a forward-thinking person when he's got in that final third, and his stats and assists, all right, over the Championship seasons has been up there with the best in the league, and a little bit in the first year that we got back into Premiership. He was probably as good as any midfield player we had that first season. So yeah, we have missed him. There's no 2 ways about that because we've had no cutting edge in that final third. I think Anguisse's been up and down. I like him as a player, but I just think he dips in and out too often. The consistency's not there. Again, as Emilio alluded to, if he was one of the ones around Christmas time that unfortunately might have, had an injury or even allegedly caught COVID or whatever. It took him a time to really recover from that. But again, his stats when he's on form is up there with the best in the Premiership. And I like him as a player, but I just didn't think he had the players around him that are on the same wavelength, because he was breaking past their midfield final third, and again his final ball was not as good as it should be for a Premiership player and an international player. But I just don't think we had it was the wide areas that concerned me. Call it what you want, wide midfield players. Our central 2 or 3, and the one shining light I think was Lamina, because I think Lamina's grown in the season. I think he's grown as a player, both showing the passion a little bit for the badge, and I think he's actually a better player than we probably give him just for at the beginning of the season. And look at him the other night, he slotted in, or the other day and a little bit yesterday, he slotted in at the back and showed some lovely touches last week before, he obviously started on the right side of midfield, centre back yesterday. I think it's what we call the wide midfield players, whatever system we play, whether it be 4-3-3 or 4-1-2-3. I think they're the ones that have been cause for concern, and Gordon's alluded to it. The quality of Lookman since Christmas has been alarming. Yes, I think Bobby Reid flattens to deceive me. I think he's a championship player playing in a Premiership team. Cavallero's, I do not know how Cavallero's played as many games as he has done. So they've all had their fair crack of the whip. They can't go knock on Scott's office every Monday and say, why aren't I playing? Because they've all had, at some stage throughout the season, they've all had their chances. Loftus-Cheek, another one. I gave him the benefit of the doubt after the first 5 or 6 games because I thought, he didn't cut the mustard. And he did grow into a couple of games where he showed what he could do. But again, he just didn't have the consistency week in, week out. If you're going to be a false number 9 or a number 10, his assist and goal ratio, even though we had enough of the ball in each game, Fulham were always in games, possession-wise. We may not create as many chances, but we had enough of the ball to create chances. Why didn't we create them? We don't know. Scott probably could have the answer for that, and the analysis team, the confidence in that final third, and as you said early on, we would have a good chance. Miss it, they go down the other end. We were on top for all of that game, and we're 1-0 down.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, we're chasing the game, and the next chance come along, as Gordon said earlier, the strikers may have snatched it. So again, we don't get the 1-0 where we should have done. So it's been a strange season, individually and collectively. And the midfield is the hub of any team, straight down the spine of the team. Centre half, centre midfield, and centre forward. And we've lacked consistency, maturity, I think, in all of them 3 positions. Okay. And the fundamental thing, we've lacked confidence and regularity of players playing in that position, because the rotation's been obviously Tosin and Anderson, had a great middle section of the season. But if you look at their form over the last 8 games, where we've picked up 1 point or 2,
went down.
They've been as disappointing as we were the first 8 games of the season when it was Hector and another.
Yeah, it's funny because it all started in the Man City match. Let me ask you, and then I want to ask Gordon this, because it's funny because it's something that Gordon said on a prior show. I want to talk about the style of play and get into Scott Park a little bit, because I know it does involve the midfield and certainly involves up front when we talk about the final third. The style of play for me is defensive in nature. It's how Scott was as a player, and I think he sets Fulham up this way. But he doesn't vary it. And actually, Gordon, I'm going to go to you right now, because I'm curious your view of this, because you said this, that it just seems that he plays the ball off in the back. We saw it again in the last match, and I'm telling you, it drives me crazy that every single time they play the ball off in the back. Why are they not varying it, Gordon? Why are they not sometimes hoofing it up to, say, a Mitro or someone else, and just taking the pressure off and just changing it up, because it's so predictable, Gordon? So I want to get your thoughts on the approach of how the team plays, because it seems that they only play one way, and you also said this. There is no plan B. There's only plan A. So why don't we go there now?
It does seem very much as though Scott I think, has had a very, very lucky season to have COVID knock the country down and no supporters to be in the ground, because if we'd have had supporters in the ground and the team had been playing the way that they've been playing all season and not getting results, then I think the crowd, and it's happened to myself, even when Rob was in the team, it's happened to us on a couple of occasions, not many, but a couple of occasions, where at the final whistle, you get booed off the park because the supporters are not happy with either the result or with the performance or with the way that you've played. And now I think if we'd have had supporters in the ground, we would have heard a hell of a lot of that from probably the 5th, 6th, 7th game on. Now, once an owner hears that in the ground, then there's only one thing that's going to happen, and the manager is going to get the sack. With there being no supporters in the ground, there's no atmosphere there. The players are just playing, and they are being coached week in, week out to play, in my opinion, a certain way.
Exactly.
Now, I've said before that we had 2 previous managers, and some supporters are asking for Slav to come back. But when we got promoted, he played exactly the same style of football that got us up from the Championship.
This is true.
And it didn't work. And after 15 or 16 games, he was still playing that style of football, and he got the sack. In comes Ranieri, who wanted us to play like Leicester.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind that Mitro is no sprinter, it wasn't working, but he kept playing the way that he wants the team to play.
Right.
And we weren't getting results, and he gets the sack. So we go back to Scott. Scott's played the same way, apart from a few tweaks in systems all season, and it's not worked out. And I don't know what the situation is, whether the club have said to him, look, we don't mind if we go back down this year. We'll support you in whatever you want to do.
Yep.
And he's trying to get the club to play Scott Parker's way. But if it's not working, you've got to change things in any business.
Totally agree.
It's like a sport.
It's driving me crazy. Thank you for saying this.
If us 4 are giving a boring podcast and people are not listening to us, then you change the format.
Right, of course.
You get rid of Rob and you get rid of Emilio.
That's very funny.
But it's one of those. But it's one of those situations where we haven't tried to play a different way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, when Mitrovic is up there, you can hit him a bit earlier. But as Rob mentioned, and we don't seem to have that attacking player that's going to be close enough to him, because they're all coming short to pick balls up, and we don't have any midfield players who are going past him. So therefore, we're always playing in front of teams, and when we get possession, we let 10 outfield players get back behind the ball, and then we've got to try and break them down with wingers or wide men who can't go past people and get crosses in. And the only person who everybody raves about perhaps getting crosses in, Tete would get down there and try and get him in. Brian on the left-hand side when he plays. But there's been no variation from day one in the way that we've played. And we can be easily set up just to play on the break against Fulham, and the likelihood is you're going to get 4, 5, 6 chances in a game, and one goal has been enough to beat us on many occasions. So it's a shame that we haven't tried a different formation, because players might have flourished in a different formation, but a formation that hasn't worked, you can't keep playing that way week in, week out.
See, that's my point. I'm glad that we're kind of going in this direction. Emilio, I'll go to you in just a second, but I want to go to Rob, because I want to get, Rob, your thoughts on what Gordon just shared, because it just, I had someone ask me today, well, he did change the formation. He has changed the formation, but the style of play, Gordon, and Rob, and I'm sorry, I meant to just say Rob right now. It's still the same. The principles are still the same. We play out from the back. It's slow. It's meticulous. It's non-aggressive. It's in the way that Parker wants to play. It's conservative in nature. When it doesn't work, I've always been brought up that you need to fix it. Why has he not fixed it? Why has he just stayed to the core principles? Am I wrong to feel this way, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the middle section of the only probably good part of the season we had, he did sort of change it in a sense that he left Mitro out, so he had more mobility, and he did try and play the more athletic type front three in terms of probably Cav up as a false number 9, Lookman on the right when he was in good form, and Bobby Reid on the right, or another, whether it be Loftus. So he did try a different concept in how we kept the ball and how we tried to get beyond their strikers, but behind their defenders as strikers. But obviously that only worked to a certain degree, and no way did it give us enough victories or points on the board to justify that middle section in my mind. That he did actually try. I wouldn't say it was a plan B, because plan A and plan B in most people's eyes is plan A is you playing football, plan B should be a long ball. There's been the odd occasions when you've seen Henderson hit the crossfield pass, which in some games has worked. But if you think back to the last 6-7 games, how many goals have we got conceded where it's one ball straight over our defenders that we weren't doing to other teams? Anderson's got caught out 3-4 times. Tossin's got caught out at least twice as well. Where teams were, typical game the other week, Burnley, you knew what Burnley were going to do when they played us. It was just going to be balls up to their 2 strikers. So Scott's probably, if he's honest with himself and analyses game by game, which I'm sure he does, and his staff, they will go into each game after a defeat the following week and think, right, who are we playing? How are we going to play them? We're going to have 60% of the ball, but we've got to make sure when we have that percentage of them, we take our chances when they do. So, this day and age in the Premiership, it's ruthless. And we've had enough possession. We may not have created the chances, but we've had enough possession in games to get close to the final third in and around the box. We've just lacked the quality, whether it be a right-back cross, a right-winger cross, a strike from the edge of the box. We have just not had the quality. And I'll go back to Emilio, who's alluded that he thought we had the squad to stay up. But lots of the players haven't, they haven't justified that. We all think we had enough players to stay up, and week in, week out, even up to 8 games ago, we were thinking, we've got a chance. We can get, as long as we go to Newcastle, last game of the season, we've got a chance. Right. But from, the Leeds game, as you alluded to there earlier on, Russ, the signs were there. And then the Villa game when we were 1-0 up with 15 minutes to go and we collapsed. And then it just went from game to game, and it just slowly grasped away from us as much as we were all hanging on to it. But Scott's not stupid enough to know that he'll have to sit down in the summer and have some big decisions to make, because we've got loan players, we've got players that are probably unhappy that might want to leave. He's got the hierarchy to just sort out whatever differences we all feel that he may have behind the scenes. We don't know. But there's some massive decisions this summer for Fulham in general.
Okay, excellent. Emilio, your thoughts on all this? Again, you and I have talked about this a great deal, about, like I said, the style of play, and Gordon shared his thoughts, Rob shared his, and glad that Rob brought this up, because again, in that middle part, like you said, in that second third, we were a little bit better, but he could see that they were working to try to make it work, and he tweaked some things in it. But again, like we're talking about, the quality just wasn't there. The passing wasn't there, as you've already alluded to. So what are your thoughts about the quality that we have compared to the style of play that we played?
Yeah, I think it's, go back to last season. I think it was about 18 months ago when I went to that private event at Craven Cottage, and I actually spoke to him privately about his style of football. I said, what he told me 18 months ago is what he did this season. Keep ball, keep possession. He'd rather wait for that moment, wait for that opportunity, and try to cover up something a little bit special. But unfortunately, in this level, in this division, you're going to be found out. Unfortunately, we're too passive, very predictable. Even if you look back to last season, what was Scott Parker's record when you take the lead last season? Very impressive. What was our record when we went a goal down? I remember some of our
terrible
season. Hull City, I think we lost 3-0 at home. Barnsley lost 3-0 at home. Stoke we lost 2-0 at home. Some performances were dire last season, but we gave him the benefit of the doubt. He got promoted. I thought we were underwhelming last season. I thought we were lucky to get promoted overall. Yes, we got to Wembley, but we deserved to be. We should have been automatically promoted last season with that squad, but we got there.
Yep.
Well done, Scott. Now, let's see what you could do in the Premier League. But unfortunately, he hasn't adjusted, like the guys have said. We are very passive, very predictable. And what has been very clear this season is when we're still in games, whether it's goalless or whatever it may be, when teams are pressing us, we were making mistakes. And that's when we got caught out. Leeds United pressed us for 90 minutes.
That's right.
We had no answer to that. Brighton pressed us 2 games. We only got 2 draws. Arguably speaking, we may be lucky to get a draw in those 2 diabolical games. So that was a problem for me, where we were given a freedom of passing and there was a nice tempo to the game. We did okay. But look at all the games that we lost or didn't pick up wins. Teams that pressed us, we struggled. And that Parker Ball philosophy, it doesn't work when we get pressed, both in the Championship and the Premier League. You look at the 2 seasons over those 46 games last year and 38 this year, same problems.
Well, I was just about to say, and Gordon already alluded to it. The style of play hasn't really changed much since the Championship. It's really been the same. And I understand that, listen, like I said, I want to give Scott a lot of credit. He got us back to the Premier League. But again, as Gordon was talking about, when something's not working right, I think you should try to fix it. You should try to change it. And Rob mentioned that there was a period where he tweaked it, but I would think even in game, you try a little bit harder to change things. He does react, listen, the Burnley match in the second half, he reacted, but I guess I'm looking for, Rob, going back to you, I'm kind of looking for a combination of Slavisa and someone that has some defensive qualities as well, because I like Slavisa's play, but as you guys were alluding to, after 15 games, again, when you just play one way, it could catch you. So is there a manager out there that will give you a little bit of both? Are those the successful ones that can play different ways, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Slavisa's quite an experienced European coach, and he's had experience at Premiership level and top Championship level at Watford. And let's give Scott his due here. He's a young manager only in his 3rd season or second full season. And the Championship to the Premiership is miles apart. It's miles apart, and we know he's playing the same sort of football, and that's his philosophy. And I stand by that. If he's got a philosophy, and Guardiola is no different. Guardiola has got the players to play his way. He's slightly changed it this year. He's come up with the new talking point is a false number 9. Never heard of a false number 9 until Guardiola introduced it. He dropped Aguero, and he's playing a false number 9, which is a new terminology for Guardiola. So Scott. I still stand by Scott, and I will do, and I'll say it right through this show that I think he needs to learn by his mistakes and over the last sort of 18 months.
See, I'm there with you. I
still think he's a young manager, English young manager that, and I like his concept, the way he plays. I just think he needs probably a bit more experienced coaches around him and above him is where I'd be coming from. So I would probably look at his immediate staff that he may have. You know what I mean?
I'm totally there with you. I'm totally there with you. Guys, I'm going to ask you both a name of a coach that I think could be a help to him. And it's not Roy, because I think, I think Roy could have a role with Fulham, but in a different role. Rob, what about Ray Lewington?
Yeah, well, I've said Ray Lew. I'd like to see Ray Lew. I mean, I know he's 64. I didn't realise he was as old as Gordon, but he's been around. He's Fulham.
Exactly.
What better to get Roy and Ray in some will get them as a double.
I would love it.
Wherever one goes, the other one eventually goes. It's
exactly. I would like them both back. I've actually tweeted that out. But I think Ray Lewington would be a huge asset to Fulham, to Scott Parker. If they're going to stick with Scott, why not bring in Ray Lewington?
Yeah, and not taking anything away from his other coaching staff, just an extra body alongside first team.
Yeah, a different voice.
Yeah. And you know what Ray's on. You can often hear him on the touchline, even but more so in this season, where there's been no spectators. But I just think he may need a little bit more experience, either on the bench with him or above him, to lean on. I think that's where he probably needs. Our director of football is obviously based in America. So what with COVID in the last 12 months, there's no sort of one-to-one meetings, probably only through this way, Zoom. It's not the same as seeing someone face-to-face, and really, either if you've got a problem or congratulating them, you can have a one-to-one in a more direct route, face-to-face, as opposed to down the line. So, I think there is some big decisions to be made, both on the pitch and off it. And it's a massive summer for Fulham with a fantastic stand that's evolved over the season, which we've seen. That in 12 months' time, we all want to be going back to the Cottage, to that stadium again. Hopefully, we're back in the Premiership, but it'll be the old yo-yo will come up and down again. I'm sure in the media we're a yo-yo side. But listen, I can take another yo-yo for another 2 years if we're good in the Championship, and the year after next we're opening the new stand in the Premiership.
Okay, Gordon, what are your thoughts about this? Because I've actually suggested it. Listen, Roy and Ray are now gone from Crystal Palace, and yes, he's 64 years old, but he still has a lot of time left. Okay, so I would bring in Ray Lewington. What are your thoughts on that? And also, I bring in Roy as a consultant or in another role with the club, but I would definitely bring in Ray Lewington. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good shout, to be perfectly honest with you. And Rob made a good point about sort of having somebody to bounce off, a bit more of an experienced player, because I spoke to Chris Coleman a few seasons ago, and I was asking him about the year that he got sacked. Fulham were 1-0 down, for instance, and this happened on many occasions because I think he got sacked because he'd drawn too many games, and we were starting to drop down the league. And he said, "I'm a centre half." He said, "I'm more defensive minded." And when we were 1-0 down, 20 minutes to go, 25 minutes to go, and we get that equaliser, I would change the formation to make sure that we don't lose the point. And I said, "Well, did you ever try going for the 3 points rather than just accepting one?" I said, "Because you drew a hell of a lot of games. You only needed to win maybe 2 or 3 of those games, and we would have zoomed up another 4, 5, 6 places and been back in about 8th or 9th or even 7th. And he said, "Well, literally, I thought I was doing the right thing at the time." He was in exactly the same position as Scott is in now. He didn't have an older head, an older professional, a more experienced person to, as I call, bounce off. Or that older person, after 2 or 3 draws, when we're on the ascendancy for the last 20 minutes, that old head turns around and says, "Hey, Chris, you can't keep. Sometimes you've got to go for the win. Sometimes you want to put an attacking player on and go for those 3 points because you're in the ascendancy, rather than just accept a point." And it's only somebody to put a different thought in the mind of Scott, whether that's, for instance, Ray Lou on the touchline, or whether that is a director of football in the meetings after games. And I'll go along with Rob, because yes, you've got to think that Scott is only in his 3rd season, what have you, and he's a young manager. He's done extremely well, to get us up. I think he's been wrong this year, but that's my opinion.
Okay.
But the club could well be looking at him for a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7-year continuity management. But I do think that the way things have gone, if you get a director of football in, for instance, Roy Hodgson, and he's not zooming around the world, but he's assessing those players that we are looking at, and he's got a lot of contacts himself all over the world. And then you bring Ray Lou in as an associate coach to Scott to advise him, not to take over, but to perhaps advise him on different things or different ways that perhaps Scott is not thinking about at present, because he's blinkered in the way that he wants the game to be played. And it'll be interesting at the beginning of next season, whoever comes in as director of football or whatever situation the club goes in, because I'm already looking forward to next season. So I'm looking forward to us playing more attacking football and playing well. And it frightens me if we play the way that we're playing now, because just watching the Swansea-Barnsley game in the playoffs, I was looking at that thinking, this is what we've got to put up with week in, week out. There's going to be hundreds of balls coming in our box. There's going to be players running at you at 100 miles an hour, and we are going to play out from our own 6-yard box. So it's going to be interesting what goes over the season. But I think the director of football, Roy and Ray, I think it's a very, very good shout, to be perfectly honest with you.
See, that's why I wanted to bring this up. And Emilio, I'm going to go to you because, again, obviously the big talking point is Tony Khan. But let's look at it this way. He is the director of football. I threw out Roy Hodgson, consultant, but again, I wouldn't be against him being the director of football. This is a key component as we look towards next season. And I understand where Gordon's coming from. Rob's thoughts on this. This is a key position. And in part of, we already talked about this on other shows, I've already said that I think that they should be either replacing Tony or moving him to a different position. We should have someone else in as director of football, as we have talked about before. I think it's crucial. I think it's part of the puzzle. What are your thoughts about this?
You're right, it is part of the puzzle. I think I've said it on a few shows this season. It's what's our strategy long term for this club? Not get promoted.
It's short term.
It's all reactive, one season vision. We've got to do what Wils did, what Brighton did a few seasons ago, what Leeds have done, essentially. They've built, they've strengthened, they've kept their manager. And look, they've got these clubs Leeds, good season. Brighton are now an established Premier League team. Why can't we do that? But I don't think you can achieve that. All you're doing is continuously revamping the team. Spend 100 million one season, sell half the team again, buy some loans. There's no strategy here. It's all very, very reactive. Oh, we've got promoted. We've only got a few weeks. Let's see what we can do. Oh, we can't go and buy any players because FFP gets in the way. So it's where's our long-term recruitment strategy? What's our strategy for the club? That goes back to Tony Khan and the owner here. Where they obviously want the club to play the Premier League. Right. The owner said that many, many times. He sees Fulham as being right location, attractive club for players and managers, and therefore he wants them to play at the big stage. But you need to have a vision here, Australia, and we don't have that. Right. While Tony Khan is running many different businesses, many of which are successful, except for Fulham Football Club, it's something needs to change there. Then you can say, well, is Scott Parker the right manager to be part of that long-term plan? If you look at it on a season-by-season basis, if we don't change the direction of football, I don't think Scott Parker is the right person to take this club forward. But if we've got a 3 to 5 year plan, can Scott be part of that plan? Potentially, yes.
Potentially in that type of realm, because then maybe he would evolve as a manager under the right philosophy. Because again, where's the philosophy, the long-term plan?
That's the key thing. That's where I see Scott potentially playing a role. And to what the guys have said, mature, evolve, have the right coaches, people in his ear every day, and he learns from his mistakes. But all he's got to do is play with some loan players here, some championship players in the Premier League. He hasn't got the squad necessarily to do what he wants to do and play to his philosophy. Then he's doomed to failure. That's the key. So the key thing for me is where do the club want to go now? They've had two attempts in the Premier League and they failed miserably in both. So it has to start from the top. And I expect the owner probably to be making a statement very soon. He'll probably change things. He won't accept 2 consecutive relegations from Premier League. That's not good enough.
No, it's not.
He'll be embarrassed by that, and he'll be embarrassed for the supporters who've had to endure 2 painful seasons in the Premier League. So give him his dues. Shahid Khan, good owner. But look at Leicester City. That's what we want. Leicester City. Look at their. That's
what we deserve.
That's
what we deserve. We deserve that.
4 seasons in the Premier League. Maybe it's time for them to get a new manager in. They've underachieved this season, but clearly they had a vision, they had a strategy, they bought the right players, and every year they kept strengthening and improving quality. we're not doing that. We just don't have that vision. It's too reactive, and that's what we need to change. And I'm happy for Scott to stay in that role if we've got a better long-term vision. I mean, it may mean stay a couple of seasons in the Championship like Leeds to just strengthen and give us more opportunity to retain Premier League survival. But at the moment, it's all we seem to be doing, to Rob's point, we will be a yo-yo club because there's no vision, there's no long-term plan.
Yeah, and that's the point. And Gordon, back to you, because again, if I, and again, I've called, and I'm not, and I'm going to say I've said I would want a new coach partially because of the style of play, but the way that Emilio just described it, I think if you change and you have a philosophy and you build a strategy of a long-term plan, like I think you even said a 4 to 5 year plan, and gives him a chance with some experienced people like we were talking about, Ray Lewington and Roy Hodgson, then you would actually put Scott in the proper position to succeed as a coach. So I think the director of football position is integral in everything that happens with Fulham Football Club. Your thoughts?
Yes, I think you're right. It's got to start somewhere, and you've got to have the right people in the right position. If director of football is overseeing the scouting setup, if he is sort of looking at the players that we are assessing to get into the club, they are major decisions that have got to be made. Because, as I mentioned earlier, you can bring players in, and if we've been doing it on statistics with Scott as well, then yes, statistics will give you one set of figures that you like. You show them to somebody else and they'll say, no, I'm not having those set of figures. I want something different. And I suppose if you look at, I'd like just like to sit down with Tony Khan and have a look at the figures of 2 players that we bought, just to assess how these players were playing for a different club and how they're playing for us. And the 2 players that I'm talking about are Cavaliero and Knockaert, because
very
my idea of wide players is they get past the fullbacks, they get crosses in, or if they cut inside, as both of these do,
they do.
The wide fullbacks, the fullbacks get around them and they get the crosses in instead. But going back to Scott, simple little things. I don't think there's been the odd occasion, but I don't think he's ever played for a 90-minute session or a 45-minute session, Knockaert on the left, Cavaliero on the right, and said, right, I want you to go at the fullback. You're now playing on your strongest foot. Get at the fullback, get crosses in. If he blocks it, we get corners. If he blocks it, we get throw-ins. But they're trying to do something different, but to keep them on the opposite wings where it's too easy to cut inside and shoot from 25 yards at an awkward angle. That is my idea of sitting down with Tony Khan and saying, why did we buy these and what statistics were you looking at for them to fit into our team?
They're predictable. It's predictable,
me,
Gordon.
Yeah,
it's
me, they haven't fitted into a style of play that suits Mitrovic. And Mitrovic was up there for a full season with them, and they hardly got any. Rob mentioned the word quality. They hardly got any quality crosses in. So a director of football is a massive position to hold.
But see, it goes back to that. See, I'm glad that you brought that up, Gordon, because it's more than just bringing in the players. Rob, over to you, because I'm glad that Gordon brought this up, because it is about analyzing data and looking at these are the players you brought in. How do they fit into our system, and how do they fit in with the players we already have? Like he just said, Mitro. And it's like you have all these players, and again, how did they all fit together? Did they think about how Knockaert and Cavalier would fit with Mitro? That's actually a good point from Gordon. When you're doing your analysis, I would think a director of football would be going over the numbers on a regular basis. Again, I don't know, again, I'm not a director of football, but I think it's more than just picking the players, Rob. I think it goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah, I mean, like any business, you'll have a CEO, and then you'll have a sales director, and then you'll have a sales team or a chairman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the chain downwards has got to be some some loyalty, some continuity there, some trust. There's got to be trust, and there's got to be knowledge. And the knowledge starts with the knowledge of the job that you're in, that you're employed to do, and the knowledge of the bigger picture and buying players and selling players. Yeah, that's all part and parcel of football, and probably a director of football's role will have an input in recruitment and stuff like that. So probably, I mean, and as I say, it doesn't help when the director of football is not in the same country. I think I know this day and age, as I've alluded to already, is with media and social media and Zoom calls and calls like this you can have. But I think for a young, inexperienced manager in only his third season, it'd be nice to go and have a coffee and sit down on a Monday morning and talk with the director of football, which a lot of, I bet Sean Dyche has got, even though it may not be Burnley's terminology of a director of football, he'll have someone that he reports to that he can talk about the games. And that's why they're an established team in the Premiership with a very workmanlike team on a low budget.
That's a great point, Rob.
He'll have
a sounding board.
It might not be called director of football in Burnley. It just might be called some kind of terminology. But he'll have someone that he can go and lean on, sit down, have a coffee, whether it win, lose or draw, and say, well, how do you think Saturday went? How do you think Sunday went? And he'll do that at the training ground. So I think Scott probably needs a little bit of that. And he's obviously not had that for the last sort of 18 months, definitely in the last 15, 16 months while COVID's been and Tony's not been in the country. So there is a call for having someone, I think, that is not going to step on your toes. He's not after your job. A director of football is an experienced businessman that knows what you both want to achieve in terms of the type of player that you want, whether it be young, under 26, 27, athletic.
But Rob,
there's got to be a business model that will, and there's got to be a transfer price, in terms of the overall package.
Right. And what's interesting about it, because the way that you're describing, after a match, you should be able to talk to someone about this because you're connected. Your, job as director of football is overseeing football operations, but it goes beyond that because you also should be analyzing besides your, Scott analyzing, you should be able to have a conversation with the director of football about, well, what went right after this match? What went wrong? Here are my suggestions. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. So I don't know if that's going on. And I think that's one of the things that is needed. And guys, we are running very long. So Emilio, I'm going to go to you. I want to get your thoughts on all this, and then we'll just end with one final topic.
Yeah, as I mentioned, obviously it all goes back around the strategy of the club. It's that's where, as I've mentioned, if I'm happy, for Scott to be considered for the long-term role as head coach, if there's a strategy and a vision for this club. This club seems to be very reactive, up and down like a yo-yo, no strategy, no vision, and we can be successful. We've got, we're a club well located, big, one of the big hubs of the world. It's an attractive proposition. A lot of the players who signed for us on loan and permanently signed because of Scott Parker's philosophy and strategy. So there is a positive there, but how do we give him the tools to succeed? Just by the way that we're set up as a club, we are a joke club. I still remember who was the pundit? Jamie Carragher, beginning of the season when he vilified us and Tony Khan for that tweet. I think I can't remember, there was a tweet that Tony Khan put out at the beginning of the season, and Jamie Carragher, I remember, lambasted us as a joke club, and then Tony Khan being a joke director of football. So again, we've got that stigma attached to us. So Tony Khan, you haven't tweeted about Fulham Football Club for 2+ months? So obviously you've got your reasons. You've probably been told to shut up and stay off social media. But at the end of the day, this is a business, and you're only any business. If you're not successful, then either you close it down or you change it, like Gordon and Rob have said. So it's going to be I'd rather wait and develop and evolve with a strategy and then get up in the Premier League and stay there, give us more chances to succeed, rather than flouting with relegation for 38 games of the season.
Right. And that's the way I'm looking at it, guys. And we're going to end the show this way. And again, I had planned on us doing player of the season and a couple of other subjects, but since the show has gone long and I've enjoyed the conversation, let's end here. I'm going to put each one of you guys in charge of Fulham Football Club. What is your plan? I'm going to start with you, Gordon. next season, what is your plan for Fulham Football Club? What would you do? I'm going to put you in the shoes of Shai Khan, the owner of Fulham Football Club. So what would you do?
Well, I suppose first of all, you've got to turn around, have a long chat with Scott and say to him that you've probably got 12 to 15 games at the beginning of next season to show me that this club is going in the right direction. And that is probably means transfer-wise, I don't know how we're going to be with FFP, as Emilio said.
Yep.
Because we could be looking at free transfers, and there's a hell of a lot of them about this summer. So we've got to pick and choose carefully to get the players in that are going to enhance our chance of being not only in the top three, but to win the championship. And there's got to be some youngsters coming through, because my thoughts on the way that we've been speaking about the academy for years, we have brought one or two players through. I don't think that's a great return. And you've got Fabio now on the line. We probably have Stans. Everybody will talk about Stansfield when he's fit. There's a couple of under-18 players who are scoring goals. So I think you've got to look at how Scott is going to use the youth team.
I totally agree with that.
23s. And we've got to get, because we don't know at the moment how many of these loanees are going back to their parent clubs. So there could be a big change in numbers and in squads. So I've got to turn around to Scott and say, you are under pressure. You need to be in the top three. We need to be winning games and winning them well, not just possession football and 1-0 victories. Because if the supporters are back in, the supporters are not going to accept it. And the last thing I want as an owner is for the supporters to be chanting Scott Parker out.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear it. Let's play some attacking football. Let's get the youngsters in. Let's get some experienced players, and let's go to win games from day one, not to hold on to a 1-1 draw after 60 minutes.
Okay. Gordon, can we make you director of football? Okay. Rob, over to you. Your plan. What would you be doing? You're in charge of Fulham Football Club.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I'd definitely keep Scott. It may not be everyone's cup of tea if you looked at social media of most Fulham fans, and I'm sure there's. But I'll go back to what Emilio says. As long as the strategy and the plans from the top downwards and Scott's happy with that are in place, then I think Scott should stay and continue his education and becoming a good young English manager, which I think he's going to go on to have a nice career in the game in terms of the way he wants to play football. Because I'd pay money to watch that. I think the loan players that we probably got that'll go, I think a lot of them will go. I don't think there'll be many that will stay. We've got 4 or 5 loan players out that will be coming back. You know, Johansson, right. Kamara. We've got at least 4 or 5 of them. Mm-hmm. It could be a bit of the old guard from 2 years ago. The first game of the season could be Johansson and Kearney in the middle of the park.
Oh boy!
I mean, it's obviously not going to be Kevin Mack, but Stefan's gone to QPR and had a new lease of life. So if we are on a budget in terms of what type of players we can go after because of issues, then we'll have to look a little bit closer to home. And, the under-18s have won their league. The under-23s have had a good season. Yep. We've seen Carvalho come onto the scene. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 in the back as well. So I think, as I said earlier, right at the beginning of the show, it's a massive, massive summer for Fulham, both on the pitch and off it.
I agree.
From the top downwards, whatever decisions we make. And Shahid, he's a multi-millionaire that's made money out of businesses. And as we've all touched on earlier, you won't want to see a business fail, twice in 4 years, as much as it's been successful in 2 of the other years. So, I definitely would stick with Scott. And I just think he needs experience in and around him, both, in and around the touchline, and someone to lean on on a Monday morning, maybe on a DFO role, that he can actually lean on for advice and experience.
Okay, excellent stuff. Over to you, Emilio. You'll have the final word on this, I guess.
Echo what the guys have said. I think we've got a good academy and some young players. We've got to breed these players. We spend a lot of effort, time. We're very proud of our young players. Let's start to bring them into the fight.
There's going to be a path.
Years in the championship until they mature and evolve. Then so be it. But for me, I think there's an opportunity here as well. Whether put aside Scott Parker for a moment, but going back to what I've said, having a team like Wolves who are good enough to win the championship and stay in the Premier League. There's a few loan players that we can potentially snap up. So I'm talking about likes of Lamina, who hasn't disgraced himself in the Premier League. I think we can get him for a reasonable, 8 million. To be honest, subject to FFP. But let's assume we can buy him. There's a couple, Olaena, to be honest, hasn't disgraced himself in the Premier League either. Will he drop a division? The team, his parent club Torino, have just managed to stay up in the Italian league. So again, it's not like he's playing. His parent club is a top 3, top 4 Italian team. So there's one or two fringe, loan players that we can potentially sign as opportunities to get us out of the Championship first time around and establish themselves again in the Premier League in 2 years' time. In a year or 2 years' time. So I think we've got to show a statement of intent here. If Scott Parker's going to remain there, I'd like him to remain, provided there's a strategy here. I don't want to see the same brand of football and the same Tony Khan reactive way of giving him a few reinforcements and doing his best to get promoted. Scott Parker will not thrive in that environment, and nor will the club. So, I'm happy. Last few games I've seen a lot of mistakes from Scott Parker, especially in those games where we had to go out and win at all costs. Leeds United, Wolverhampton Wanderers, Aston Villa, Southampton. These are games, where Scott Parker's strategy was not. Wolves is a good example. Don't lose that game and you get sucker punched and you still lost a game. So Scott Parker, you failed miserably in that game to go and get 3 points. Too many of those incidents happened this season. And also too many of them happened last season, but we managed to hang in there and managed to squeeze into the Premier League by the playoff final. So I'm sitting on the fence with Scott Parker. I'd only retain him if there's a clear direction of plan for the club. Keeping the same structure, we need to move on. We need to get somebody else who's a little bit more bold, a little more adapted to the Premier League. And, there's a lot of people being touted. But again, if you have to ask me who would I pick, there's not many people out there. That's the problem.
Yep.
There's not many people out there. So it's a difficult decision, but I'd like to see some change at the top and become a club that's run more professionally, not vilified by the media, and a club that we were loved 10 years ago when we got to Europa League. That's what I want. I want to see the Fulham of 10 years ago that were the pride of the country, not the laughing stock of the country.
Okay, excellent stuff. And just to end, I'll just share my thoughts on it because I'm glad that Rob shared his thoughts. And I can be convinced because I'm one that said, I want Tony and I want Scott gone because I wanted a clean house. But under Rob's scenario, I can buy that because, again, if there was a long-term vision and there's someone in there that could be a sounding board for him, someone that he could work with to help him mature as a manager and learn from his mistakes, yes, I could then stick with Scott Parker, but there would have to be what I would call a Fulham way, a long-term vision of how we're going to run our business that involves the academy, as everyone has said here, a pathway. There should be a pathway, and there should be dialogue for Scott to have someone to bounce ideas off of. Maybe like we're talking about Ray Lewington on his staff, maybe as a director of football, I'll say it, Roy Hodgson. Why not? Why not? I would love to see that. Anyways, great show, guys.
Sorry to add, Russ. One other thing as well I didn't say. It might upset a few fans, but we need to move on from the old guard. So I love Johansson, Tim Ream, they've got to go. Cabano, move on. Josh Onemo, I don't think is good enough. These are players. Let's move on. Kamara, move away from these players and rebuild to that new 5-year plan. Those guys have done a job for us, and it's time to move on. That's my view. I know you'll upset a lot of fans, but you can't be loyal to the past. You've got to look forward to the future and keeping, Ream, Johansson, Cabano, Kamara. That's going backwards, not forwards. That will lack ambition. Okay,
I understand that, my friend. Let's wrap up the show for my very special guests, Gordon Davies and Rob Wilson, of course, my co-host, Emilio. I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk.